Hi everyone, I'm Eleanor. Welcome to the 19th day of August, which is the 19th day of my Sealy Challenge. Today I read something really different from the last several books. In fact, really different when I think about it from all the books I've read so far. It's been a day of realizing how large the world of poetry is, and how just as you think you've got the hang of a certain kind of poetry, or you begin to maybe appreciate a new kind of poetry that you didn't think you would, all of a sudden you pick up a book and it's another whole world. And the temptation is to throw the book down and say, well, this isn't poetry. But it definitely is poetry. You have to change your mindset. And I think that's something that makes poetry as exciting as it is. The problem is not many people realize this. A lot of people think of poetry as one thing, a very blinkered way of thinking. And it's just because they haven't seen what's out there. They're not aware. So this book is called Hoarders, and it's by Kate Durbin. I saw it on the Wave Books website. Wave Books is a small poetry publisher, but very well known I know it anyway, in the US. And I'm always interested to see what they're publishing every year. And to my surprise, when I went to my local bookstore in the city the other day, they had this. And I was really shocked because I haven't seen, I don't think, a Wave book publication ever before. I think it might be, possibly, because Kate Durbin was a visiting poet at a Festival of the Arts in Queensland several years ago. Maybe she has a following here. I'm not sure, but of course I had to pick it up. And the poems here look completely different from what we have seen previously. There are sections. Each section has a person's name and the place in the US where they live. And the poems generally look like kinds of prose poems. You know, this looks like a prose poem, really, although sometimes it's not in paragraphs but more in lines. But it's definitely, we are pretty much as far as you can get from Alice Oswald at the moment as you can be, with form and content, I would say, completely different. And while I might love Alice Oswald, I do. I mean, I only read her a few days ago and already I love her. And while I feel that the world of traditional form and the mastery and the craft is possibly where my true heart lies, I also need books like this in my life. So this book is primarily, from beginning to end, a concept. So the concept is that Kate Durbin is going to look at each different person, and I'm not sure if they are real people or if she made them up from people she knew, or maybe she's completely basing it on the reality show Hoarders. I don't know if you have that wherever you live, but there is a very popular show that is it's a kind of documentary, but it's really exploiting hoarders for entertainment as well. You know, there's that fine line in reality TV of entertainment and documentary. So she takes each person and presents them in a poem that has italics and then normal font. So, for example, I marked a few pages to show you. For example, this is the first one, Marlena, in Topanga Canyon, California. You can see there's some italics and some not. Now, the italics is the person speaking. The regular font is the poet describing the objects. So, for example, you might have in italics, but after our daughter was born, my husband started dating other women secretly. And without any stop, without a space, and without punctuation, it goes straight into the description, dozens of Louis Vuitton bags under the bed. And sometimes this is done so smoothly that you forget that there's a switch and you think that the person is still, the hoarder, the person is still speaking. Other times it's very marked difference. I'll give you another example. I'll just go like this when the italics stop. So, my name is Linda and I love cooking rotting food. So in this case, there's the juxtaposition, which is very telling. I'll do the next one too, just to give you an idea. My kitchen has all kinds of wonderful molds. A Mongolian fire pot. Got that. Bag of sugar with mice in it. There is an element of repulsion and disgust that you feel as the book progresses, and by the end you're really dealing with excrement, but it's not at all exploiting it. There's sorry, that's Augie. You're not actually exploiting it. The poet is not exploiting these people. In fact, it's the opposite. What she's doing, and it looks much simpler than it is she is almost reinventing the Hoarders show in a way by showing things through her own point of view and her own eyes. She's taking over. She is the camera. She's the director. But she's keeping it super, super simple. She's giving you a window into the words used by the person who suffers from the psychiatric condition of hoarding. And then she describes really very simply certain objects. One more example maybe. And now my husband's alcoholism is triggered by Barbie driving a pink Corvette alone. So there is also great enjoyment. I mean, even though the book is not taking advantage of these people, there is necessarily, I believe, at least for me, great enjoyment in reading the details of many of these objects, because we are all living in this world where objects mean a lot to us. Now, these people take it to an extreme that is unhealthy, counterproductive. I mean, it's an illness. But this book is showing you and reminding you of the connections you have to objects. For example, a woman who collects the Barbie dolls. You know, I remember what that was like, having my own Barbie dolls when I was younger. And definitely the woman who collects recordings of all these television shows from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they're listed in 2 long paragraphs, 2 whole pages. And my first reaction was nostalgia, because so many of those titles were television shows that I enjoyed, and everyone can relate to that. So, it's a commentary on America. It is specifically American. It's a commentary on, I think, religion as well. Well, Christianity. I would say the majority, I haven't checked, but the majority of the people shown in these poems have Christian paraphernalia that is mentioned, and a general discussion of capitalism, but I didn't find that it was didactic at all. It was more revelatory. A very, very easy read. I mean, especially coming after Alice Oswald. I mean, this is, you could read this in an hour or two, and it's very enjoyable. You would be put off your food at certain moments, but it is what it is. It's a helpful book. It's a book that allows you to take a step back from what you take for granted in your life, and to look at your connection to objects differently. What you collect, why you collect it, why you don't let go of certain things and others you have no problem letting go of. Your identity within your home. It reminded me of the book I talked about a few days ago by Hadara Barnadav. I mispronounced her name in that video, and I have to apologize once again. It's horrible, but Hadara Barnadav, the way she looked at objects, in front of my eyes, objects were changing. And poetry is so powerful in that way. And there is a very good article, which I will link to in The Believer. And a wonderful poet and poetry teacher called Emily Skillings, she's one of the best, interviews Kate Durbin about this book. And I really got so much out of reading that interview, and it made me realize that when you have a book like this that has a concept, it's this one idea, let's do a chapter for each person and all the forms will be exactly the same. When you have a concept, I think that's when you really need to go to secondary sources, not to help you understand the work so much, but because you need conversation. And, I'm sitting here with the camera. There's no conversation happening. I mean, this is the best I can do, really. You need to have a conversation, even if it's virtually, with other people who have talked or written about this book, because that's when the book comes alive. This would make an excellent book club book. Book clubs generally only deal with prose. And I actually think that poetry is the best it's really the best genre for book clubs. I don't understand, why it's not done more. Maybe I should start one. In any case, what was I saying about Emily Skillings? So Emily Skillings pointed out, she brought up Gertrude Stein's Tender Buttons and Ponge that I had discussed in the Barnadav video. But she also mentioned Harryette Mullen, another poet who wrote a book called Trimmings, which deals with objects. And I'd forgotten about that, even though I do have it in my collection. But I read it a long time ago. So I'll put a link to that as well, because you might be interested in that. And actually, sorry, I forgot about that. Maybe I should go back and reread it. In any case, one last idea I just saw in my notes. One extra thing that Emily Skillings and Kate Durbin mentioned in the interview, I can't remember which one mentioned it, but they said that there's also a novel that one of them felt had a similar tone and a similar point of view to Hoarders, and that is a book called Convenience Store Woman. It's originally a Japanese book by Sayaka Murata. Now I'll link to that too, because I read that book when it came out, I think several years ago, and really loved it. And the minute they reminded me of that through the article, I thought to myself, yes, that's right. You know, this young woman is working in a convenience store, and she almost has, well, she has, from what I remember, a kind of relationship with the objects. So if you're someone who maybe doesn't really want to read poetry, but you're watching this and you're still interested in the subject, I would highly recommend Convenience Store Woman. In fact, if I had time, I think to discuss, I would discuss Convenience Store Woman read alongside Hoarders, possibly. But, but who knows? Okay, so I will leave you with that. I'll see you tomorrow. I have no idea what I'm going to read tomorrow. I want to remind you, don't forget that the only real property is the property of the mind. Ooh, that's a good one for this. The only real property is the property of the mind. Okay, on that note, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for playing along. Bye.